afternoon and good evening to you. Welcome to the Tube. Happy birthday, happy feeling grand, in the world. Welcome to another Q&A Wednesday. Let's get on with it, shall we? It's a very musical morning today. Yes, musical morning, yes. Anyway, question 1. Any chance you can make a video on scales and how to use them over chords? Yes. Not sure when I'll get to it, but I will make a video talking about pentatonics and how to use them over chords and what I use for soloing and what a lot of guitarists who I've studied, like Jimi Hendrix and John Frusciante, Mike McCready, Peter Green. I'll talk about what they used as well. Yeah, I will get to that at some point, I promise. I just don't know when at this point. I've got quite a lot of videos I've got to do. I've got a few things I've got to demo. Because when I get things sent to demo, I don't like to keep it too long. I don't like to think I'm taking liberties with things. I like to get the demo of that done as quick as possible and get it sent back to the owner. Because I don't like the idea of keeping things too long. I think it just feels a bit like you're taking advantage of people's good nature a bit. So I've got a few things to demo, and I've also got a few more teaching videos that I want to get out of the way first, involving certain people, which I'm not going to tell you who. But yeah, then I will get to talking about scales, and I've got if you've seen some of my my Rory Gallagher unlocking a neck video and some other videos I've done, I've got little diagrams that I'm going to talk about of unlocking the neck and how to use them over chords and whatnot. So yeah, I will get a video on that done at some point, I promise. It's just, just getting round to it and filming it, because it'll take quite a long time to film. It's like a teaching video, so it'll take a long time to get right and film and edit it together and whatnot. So, but yeah, I will get to that at some point. Okay, so I hope I answered this question. Moving on, question 2 now. If you had the chance to play with only one Marshall cab, would it be the JCM 900 A cab or JCM 900 B cab? If you could choose either one, what would it be? I don't know. I like both. Not necessarily on at the same time. I used to cart around these two cabs to pretty much every gig and use kind of like I used to use one, and now I'd always have one as a backup. To a point where I actually took the speakers out of one. I took the speakers out of the A cab just so it just had the look of a double stack, just to ease upon the heaviness of carrying speakers around. But that didn't last very long. I think if I was given a choice, like you said, you can have the JCM 900 B cab or you can have the A cab. You can't have both. I'd pick the A cab. The A cab they sound different. This cab sounds different to this cab. The B cab, which you're hearing most of the time in videos recently, since I got my new camera, has more bottom end. It's a darker, warmer sound. Whereas the A cab is a little bit brighter. It hasn't got as much low end, and it just has a little bit more sparkle, so to say, than the B cab. The B cab's quite straight and to the point, whereas the A cab's got a little bit more kind of brightness, more presence to it, so to say. And also the really cool thing being angled is if it's on the floor, you can hear it. With the B cab, where it is, it's kind of where I'm stood here. The B cab, even though it's slightly angled on the front baffle board, it's still a little bit muffled for me to hear. For me to hear it properly, I have to stand basically where the camera is, or just over to the right to hear the amp properly, or crouch down right in front of it. Because where I am now, the sound isn't projecting to my ear. It's projecting kind of like there, so to say. It's kind of like coming outwards at an angle. So for it to reach my ear, it'd have to be angled massively, and it's not. So if I was given a choice, I think I'd have to pick the A cab just because I like the angle of it. I like the more bright kind of brightness of it. I like more of the presence of this cab. And I've had this one longer than this one. That's not favoritism. I think it is. I don't know. Is that favoritism? Tell me, people of the tube, is that favoritism? But no, I have had this cab longer, and I've used this cab a lot more than I've used the B cab. I used the B cab for a long, long time, but I think I've used the A cab a ton more. And I say this one's just got a little bit more, like I say, high-end sparkle. There's just something in this cab that's very, very special. This cab is ridiculously special as well, and so's that one, and so's that one. But we're talking about JSM 900 cabs here, and yeah, basically, I could have summed this up very quickly, but as you know, people of the tube, I don't like to do that. Anyway, yeah, I think I'd have to pick the A cab myself. People of the tube, which one would you pick if you could have a B cab, which is darker, warmer, fatter, more low-end kind of sound, or the A cab, brighter, more presence, more sparkle, more even kind of sound, less kind of low-end kind of thump. But you still got the low-end thump out of the A cab. It's just a little bit brighter, a bit more sparkly, a little clearer than the B cab. Which one would you pick, A or B? That was good. A or B, not the way around, Dave. I don't know. It's like Captain Beefheart. Driven away from the steering wheel. Anyway. If anybody's seen that video, you know what I mean. He goes, the wind blew high, the wind blew low. Anyway, I'm going off on tangents again about Captain Beefheart now. What's going on? Anyway. I'm spitting on my guitar, which isn't nice. Pretty gross. Okay, yeah, so A cab for me. People with a tube, which one would you pick? Okay, so how about such question? Question 3 now, everybody. Question 3. Is that a record? 1 second, everybody. Getting close to the camera. That's 2 questions in 6 minutes. I think that's a record. I think that's definitely a Dave record there. And I still rambled. Anyway, I can ramble about anything. Snail shells. You get me rambling about snail shells. Don't do that. I'll be here for hours. Anyway, question 3. Yeah. Compose yourself, Dave. Question 3. I'm looking at getting a CR60, but I was wondering if I should save up the extra money to get the CR120. What are the differences and what are the pros and cons of both? Right. To me, I hear no difference other than, obviously, the CR120 running for a 412 is bigger, fatter, and more kind of depth than the CR60 with a single 12-inch speaker. But on Monday, I am going to do a video. I'm going to take the chassis out of the CR60 and we're going to compare them to see if there is any difference. Because the really weird thing is, the settings I have on my CR120 are exactly the same to the settings I have on my CR60, and they sound the same. But I don't hear any difference other than, like I say, the fact of you've got 4 speakers for the CR120 and only 1 for the CR60, which gives it a little bit less kind of fatness and depth of sound. It's a more of a immediate kind of thing, if that makes any sense. There's like a fatter thing to the CR120 with 4 speakers than there is to the... It's not a thin sound by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a smaller sound coming through 1 speaker than it is through 4, if that makes any sense. So the pros and cons are the CR120 needs a cab, a 412 cab, or a 212 cab. You could get away with a 112 cab if you've got a speaker that can handle 100 watt. I know the CR120 is 120 watt, but I think a 100 watt speaker would be okay with it. I don't think it would push it too much. I think the speaker would hack it. That's the only drawback on that, is you can't really have a 1/12 cab unless you've got a really high wattage speaker, and then that cab's going to be silly heavy. Because like the Carlsberg amp, I don't know if you can see it, the Carlsberg amp here, that's got a 100 watt Celestian speaker in it, and that amp is an absolute boat anchor. You could use it to anchor the Titanic. You really could. It's ridiculously heavy, that amp is. Just because of the speaker. If you take a speaker out, the amp weighs literally nothing. It floats away, pretty much. You know, it's made of helium. But the speaker just adds so much weight to it. And the same thing goes with the Flexi Blues Deluxe combo I've got with the head and the cab. The cabinet's got a 100 watt speaker in it. And it makes it very, very heavy. But yeah, the CR60 is lighter, more compact, simple, like, you know, straight ahead. Everything's in one. It's really, and it's an awesome size. It's not massive, but it's so, I mean, in all fairness, it's tiny and it's awesome and it's built to last. I feel that, like, the CR6, well, both are built to last, but the CR60 being a little combo, you could, like, swing it in war like an axe and, you know, wipe out your enemy with its orange power. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Anyway, more hyper than usual, I think, is what the case is. Anyway, where was I? I don't know. I was here. Good gag. Anyway, yeah, CR60 is CR120, CR60, and the compact cab are built to last. But if you're after kind of nice, compact, not taking up a lot of space, but still loud enough to gig with, but like, you know, like a bit more compact and easy to get around, CR60 is great for that. But if I was given the choice, as much as I love the CR60, the CR120 with the cab is just otherworldly. It really is. I mean, when I first got the CR120 from Orange with that cab, and I did the demo of it that day in Old Hat when I worked at Old Hat, the sound, I don't think I came off the amp all day. The sound of it was just the sound I want, plugging straight in. I had no desire to use pedals. It's a lot like, you know, these two amps are like my ultimate. It's going to take something very, very special to beat that. Well, the Boss Katanas on par with these as well. So the Boss Katana and these two are kind of like my go-tos, because they're just that thing. I don't need pedals with them if I don't want them. It's one of those things where I'm happy with them even if I don't have pedals. It's very rare that I haven't played through many amps where I've gone, it's good, but I wish I had this. It's good, I wish I had that. I don't get that with those three amps. You know, I don't get that at all. I didn't get that with the PV Bandit Red Stripe either. That was the same kind of deal as that, but unfortunately that's no longer with me, sadly. But pros and cons of both. Like I say, with the CR120, you need a cab, which can add to the weight, which can also add to kind of size, and, you know, certain other issues like and the CR60, it kind of covers that base nicely. You know, it's the best of both worlds in the fact you've got the CR120 sound, but in a more compact unit. But it will be interesting to see on Monday how different, when it's going through the same 412, it does sound. It will be very interesting to see if there's any difference at all, because obviously you have the ability to run the CR60 through a cab. It's got two speaker outs of I think 16 ohm, which is the same as the 120. So yeah, I think I've rambled up enough. I think I could talk about that for hours on end. But we will find out more on Monday how different these two are. Like I say, pros and cons. Pros are they're both awesome amplifiers, and you can't go wrong with them. Either of them. They're just amazing. They really are. The cons are, like I say, the 120 is more expensive, and you need a cab, whereas the the CR60 is cheaper, and it's already got its inbuilt speaker. And it's very, very small, compact, and it's not particularly light, but it is light-ish. You know, for a combo, it's fair. It's got some weight to it, but you kind of want that anyway. You don't, you know, if something's super light like this, you can kind of worry that you might break it. But you know, you want a little bit of weight, not that it's going to break your back, but like, you know, the CR60 is good for that. But yeah, like I say, that's the only con I can think of. Other than that, they're both awesome amplifiers. And people have actually said, like, why don't I use the CR120 anymore live? I put that Voodoo Child up the other day. I was using the Boss Katana then. On volume was on 2. And it wasn't mic'd up. I was stood in front of it. I don't know how it's that loud. It's unreal. The Boss Katana is ridiculous. But people are saying, why don't you use the CR120 anymore? And I still do, but I'm having to take a break from using a head and a cab for gigging, as I've done my back in. After about 13, 14 years of carrying these big beasts around and heads and loads of gear and stuff, my back's taking a beating. So I'm just taking a break from big amps. So in all fairness, I've got so many combos I use for live, but nothing sounds like one of these through one of these, and I miss it when I'm gigging, but I've got to take care of my back, otherwise I'll just be like this and I won't be able to carry anything, and that's not good enough. So I'm taking a bit of a break from carting the CR120 or the Marshall MG or any big amp around with me at this point in time. And the Boss Katana's perfect because it's not massive, it's tiny, it's very portable, it's just really, really cool, and it doesn't, you know, destroy your back when you lifting it up. So yeah, and the same thing with CR60. I'm using that for gigging. I'm also using that Marshall Master Reverb for gigging as well when I feel like it. But the CR60 is my main backup unless I fancy using it, and the Boss Katana is my main amp at this point in time, just because it's so small and it's just easy to get in and out. And some of the venues I play, size is an issue. So anyway, I think I've rambled off on that enough. But I hope that's like a double answer question for a question that nobody ever asked, Dave. Anyway, yeah, I hope that's actually a question on that though. But like I say, on Monday we'll see the difference, see if we can hear the difference between the CR60 and the CR120. Because like I say, I don't hear a difference at all, other than obviously the cab size is different. But yeah, EQ wise, I don't hear the difference. They sound identical to me. They really do. So we'll see on Monday. So yeah, I hope that's your question. Sorry for the rambling on to the question that nobody asked for. I do apologise about that. My mind. Okay, so moving on to question 4 now. I'd like to buy an affordable amp to get the John Frusciante tone. My price range is 200 to 400 euros. What amp would you suggest? Well, there's a few. Sorry, everybody. 1 minute. For some reason, my the D. Oh, and the A string. What's going on there then? The D and the A string on my Revelation quad that's hung on the wall here. The A and the D string were some out of the nut for some reason. I saw that. I had to correct that because I don't know why that is. Someone been playing funnies. Who hurt you, my child? Who hurt you? Anyway, moving along. I forgot the question. Sorry. I'm not with it today. I'm totally just... It's all gone wrong. It's all gone wrong, everybody. Yeah, sorry. Affordable amp for John Frusciante. It's going to be the usual suspects for me, I'm afraid. Marshall MG, 100 watt. You probably, with that budget, you'll probably be able to find the HDFX half stack. The old one. You don't want the new one. They're just not good. The old early 2000s MGs, you'd probably be able to find a full half stack for that price, because they're normally around... the lowest I've seen a half stack go is like 180, and it wasn't in horrendous condition, and it did its job and it worked. So failing that, there's the MG 100 HDFX half stack. I'm gonna sneeze. I can feel it coming. I'm not gonna sneeze on camera. Oh, hang on. Yeah, MG 100 HDFX half stack. Failing that, there's the 100 watt Marshall MG combo, single 12 combo. That gets, both of them do the John sound. The Boss Katana 50 watt, the Boss Katana 50 does the John thing. I think you'll struggle to get an Orange CR for that price. You might get a second-hand CR60. You might be able to find if you can find a second-hand Orange CR60. And there's also the PV Bandit Red Stripe. So there'd be the 5 I would pick. There'd be the Marshall MG100 HDFX half stack. You should be able to get one of them fairly cheap, because a lot of people don't like them, which still blows me away. Well, it's always blown me away. I've always loved the MGs, and as you all know, I don't need to talk about that. It's just me rambling on again. Stop the tangent before you go down there. Okay, so yeah, the Marshall MG HDFX half stack, you might be able to find one of them for the price. Failing that, you should be able to get a Marshall MG 100 DFX, which is the single 12 combo, not the new one, not that one you can see down there, not that one. That's just no. That's just a no-no. It sounds horrific. I don't enjoy that amp in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, so where was it? Yeah, so that's the other one, the 100 watt MG. The CR60, you might be able to find a second-hand one, and that'd be a great. If you could find a CR60, that'd be a great amp for get the John sound, especially on the Dirty channel. The Dirty channel on the CR series is just. I want Orange to do the Crush. I want Orange to do a CR120 CR60 Mark II, where it's basically just 2 Dirty channels in one amp. Get rid of the clean channel. The clean channel on the CRs is amazing. It's really, really nice. But the amp would be unreal if it had 2 of the Dirty channels and the gain stages were different. So, for instance, like on channel 1, of the CR120 Mark II that I've dreamed up in my head, like the gain would go from 1 to 5, and that'd be a lot on channel 1, and then channel 2 it'd go from 5 to 10. So you could still get that immense amount of gain on channel 2, but you could get a real nice kind of broken up, kind of clean, pedally kind of platform on channel 1, because the clean channel is really nice, but it's a bit finicky on what it likes running through it. It's a bit funny, whereas the dirty channel is ridiculously versatile. So that's what I would love to see. But again, regardless of that, I've done it again. Should rename me Tangent Boy. This week on the Adventures of Tangent Boy. Okay, so yeah, MG100 HDFX half stack, MG100 single 112 combo, the old one, not the new one. Orange CR60, you might be able to find a second-hand one, hopefully, maybe, for around your budget, maybe. That's a questionable one, though, because they still go for quite a bit of money. Boss Katana 50, you should be able to find a second-hand one of them, or even a new one. They're really cheap. I don't know how Boss do it, but I would recommend the 50 any day of the week. It's just unreal. As are all these amps, and the PV Bandit Red Stripe, the Transtube series. Those 5 amps do John effortlessly. And they do everything else as well. From, like, really clean funk stuff to kind of like, classic rock to blues to reggae to, to punk to thrash metal. You name it, they do it. And it's just like, ugh. So yeah, that'd be my 5 picks. You should be able to get every single one of them amps, maybe apart from the CR60, which I'm not 100% sure on, for around your budget. So that'd be my 5 recommendations for that, especially for the John sound. Yeah, definitely. You should be able to find at least like one of them for that price. Second hand, or the Boss Katana new is only like 200 quid. I don't know what that would equate to in euros. It'd be a little bit more, but I don't think it would go any further than 400 euros, which you say is the top end of your budget. So if you wanted to buy a brand new amp, I would say the Boss Katana 50. If you wanted to buy a second hand one, the MGs or the PV Bandit or the CR60, if you can find one for a good price. Okay, so that'd be my 5 picks. I hope you get one of them for a decent price, and I hope. And oh yeah, and if you do get one and you have trouble getting the John tone out of any of them, depending on what it is, let me know, and I'll just give me leave a comment on whatever video I'm doing at the time, and I'll reply to you and help in any way I can. Okay, so that'd be my 5 picks for the John tone with your kind of affordable amp kind of thing. Okay, so question 5. What's the point in buying pedals what's the point in buying distortion pedals and overdrive pedals, if your amp already has a great OD and distortion sound? And what pickups would you recommend for funk in a Strat or a Telecaster guitar? Okay, the point of buying distortion pedals, is to give you a different flavour of sound. If your amp's got a really awesome distortion sound, that's really cool, but your amp will kind of have that quality. Whereas if you have a distortion pedal, you can change it to do something different. Like, for instance, if you got a Fender amp and you run a Marshall Governor through a Fender amp, all of a sudden you've got a more Marshall-y sounding amp. Certain amps will have certain characteristics, like the MGs have a different characteristic to the CR120, and the CR120 has a different characteristic to the Carlsberg, and the Carlsberg has a different characteristic to the Boss Katana that lives downstairs, and all sorts. So the whole idea of buying distortion pedals is it just gives you different flavours of things. It's kind of along the same lines as what I spoke about in last week's Q&A about shredding. It's like having one colour only. If you've got like a Marshall Plexi, the Plexi does kind of it does like super clean, cleanish, and that overdriven crunchy sound, which is just heaven. But it only does those 3 things. And most old Plexis, when they're wound up all the way, don't distort a great deal unless you've got humbuckers. If you've got single coils, you're not going to get a lot out of them. So to boost it with a pedal sends it into heavenland even more so. So I would say the whole reason of buying a distortion pedal is just to give you different flavours of sound, different colours and stuff like that. It's like, well, as an example, like for instance, like this is kind of like, you know, the jackhammer. But if I combine it with a governor, really awesome rock tone. But now if I combine it with DS2, I get a totally different sound. You know, they're both different animals, and because of that, you get a different feel. So I would say the whole concept of buying distortion pedals is just because it gives you more tonal range. You know, you can set pedals to do certain things that you can't get your amp to do. You can set them for kind of lo-fi stuff. You can do all sorts of stuff with them to alter your tone of your amp. It's just good fun. You know, pedals are great fun. I don't really like not having pedals because I like the ability to kind of mess around with sound if I feel like it. It's like, oh, I don't want that sound. I want that sound. You know, or like if I come to a solo and I like the option. Whereas if I was running into my amp, say I had the CR120 or the Marshall MG at a gig and I was just straight into the amp and I went for a solo, and first solo I did of the night was like, yeah, this sounds great. This is really, really cool. Second solo of the night, I got to it and I was like, I don't want this sound for this song. I'm stuck with that sound no matter what I do. Whereas if the first solo of the night has this sound, you know, really hollowy, warm, stratty kind of sound. And then the second solo, I start with that same sound, and I'm like, I don't like it. I can kick on the DS2 for a different sound. You know, hopefully you might be able to hear the difference there, but that's the whole point of having distortion pedals. Even if your amp sounds amazing straight in, you can get different flavors and colors and all sorts of different textures. Drop my plectrum. With distortion pedals, you can do so much with them. It's really, really cool, and you can have like you can get like, you know, really kind of like super thin sounds with pedals, and it's really, and like with EQ pedals, you can get like lo-fi stuff and then kick it off and it goes big. You know, it's what it is really, because I could plug into. I always feel it's really important to be able to plug into any amp without pedals and still get your sound, but it's a lot more fun to have pedals and have fun with pedals, and reverbs and delays and distortions and wahs and phasers, flanges and all sorts of stuff. It's just fun, and that's what the guitar and music should be. It should never be kind of like, you know, a straight ahead thing. And that's why I didn't like when Joe Bonamassa came out saying if you use pedals, you're just kind of like covering your mistakes and all that lot. Because Joe has a responsibility bigger than himself, if you saw what I mean, in what he says. Because a lot of people will listen to that and see it as gospel and then throw all the pedals away and then might be unhappy because of it. You know, people of that kind of higher tier have to realise that a lot of people listen to their advice and take it as gospel, and because of that, they have a responsibility to not alienate that thing. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think I'm talking nonsense. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea of using distortion pedals, it just, like I say, it just gives you different flavours. Whereas if you just have that one sound, which is cool, you might get fed up of it and bored of it eventually. It's like, well, I want something else. Like, you know, that sounds really cool and it's big and fat, but maybe I want something a bit thinner and more cutting, you know, so you could whack a pedal on that does that. Whereas you wanted something really dark, you could do, like, you know, stick on something else like that, and, you know, then you've got a different tone instead of just having that one tone, you know, that you've got. Because let's face it, if you're mid gig, you know, you can always go back and tweak your amp mid on the fly, but it's, you know, you don't want to be doing that all night. You're there to entertain. You're not there to watch people tweaking your dials on your amp. You know, I always feel the amp should be set it and forget it kind of deal. You know, you set it up, it sounds the way it sounds, as long as you're happy with the sound, and you leave it alone and you don't touch it unless it starts acting the goat. Which my Plexi 50 watt head used to do a lot. Playing pubs, it used to go wappy. But anyway, that's another story for another time. But yeah, it's just different tones. It's different chords. Like, you know, like I say, if you've got your amp that does one thing, that's really, really cool. But if you're, and you can do a lot with that, like, you know, if it's coming from your guitar, like Richie Blackmore he only used to use a treble booster just to push his Marshalls. But other than that, he had never had any pedals at the front or anything like that. He just had that one sound, and that's Richie Blackmore. That's cool. But the fun lies, I think, in having different sounds and being able to switch. Like John Frusciante does the AOL sessions in 2006 of the Chili Peppers. They do Scar Tissue, and John does the second solo using, it's either the Mosrite fuzz or a big muff. It sounds like a big muff more than a Mosrite fuzz, to be honest with you, because the Mosrite fuzz, he only ever really used it to boost things. It was never really full out fuzz. It was always, you can hear it on the La Cigale gig where he's using it. It's very low gain. He didn't use the Mosrite fuzz for anything big. He just combined it with the DS2 to get a little bit more. But John starts the second solo with a fuzz pedal, and it sounds like a big muff. It's just got that big fat sound. And he starts on his neck pickup, and he immediately switches down to his bridge pickup because he's not liking the sound of it. It's too dark and woolly, and there's no cut to it at all. And towards the end of the solo, he does switch back to his neck pickup. But the final solo, it starts again with that big fuzz tone, and he kicks on his Ibanez wah, maybe to get a bit more brightness. I don't know. It could be just he felt like it. But at some point during that last solo, he kicks off the fuzz pedal. It must be fairly quickish, and he goes to his DS2 because at the end of the gig, you can see him go over to his DS2 and turns his DS2 off. He doesn't turn anything else off. It was just his DS2. So again, it's just different tones that inspire you at a different time. Whereas if you've got your one sound, you might get bored of that and you might want something different because it's nice to change things up. It's cool to have one thing, but it's better to have many things. And it's nicer to have more colours in your palette than just black or like, you know, or green or blue. You know, it's cooler to have different textures and layers of stuff. So that's that. You know, very long-winded answer there, and I kind of went off on a lot of tangents there. I think I even went off on the tangent of Joe Bonamassa. But no, I do feel that coming back to that quickly, just to round that off, it does. I do feel like people like Joe have a big responsibility to not say silly things regarding that kind of thing. 'Cause not only does it get them in trouble, and he made good light of it. I feel Joe's got, he's got a good sense of humour. He's not an idiot. But sorry everybody, I've got a sniffy nose all of a sudden. It's Joe Bonamassa hexing me. But no, he's got a responsibility to not say that kind of thing. It's like, you know, just because he has moved away from having a big pedal board and that crazy setup he used to have, doesn't mean everyone else should. You know what I mean? And that should have been his response, saying, "Oh, I just couldn't be bothered with it anymore. I wanted to go to my Tweed Twins and my Les Pauls and just an overdrive and a wah pedal, and that's what I just couldn't be bothered with the faff of it." If he had said that, I'd been cool. But to say, like, you know, "Oh, you're hiding mistakes" or whatever he said, you know, with pedals and all this kind of stuff, Pedalgate 2017. It was silly because a lot of people listen to that and they will go, "Oh, Joe Bonamassa's doing it, maybe I should do it," and then they'll flog stuff and go, "Wish I hadn't done that because now I can't do this and I don't have that anymore and I don't have this." So people that had the responsibility to kind of like not be silly and just be a bit more switched on to kind of like, you know, different strokes for different folks kind of thing. Really, it's like, you know, just because you do it doesn't mean everyone should do it. Just because you think one thing doesn't mean everyone should think that. You know, it doesn't work that way. So anyway, rambled on enough about that. So let's move on to question 6 now. I don't know. Sorry, everybody. Sorry. I feel I'm doing it again. My brain's like, "You're doing it wrong. People are going to hate this." Okay, so sorry, everybody. Own worst enemy here. So question 6, everybody. Question 6. Oh, I don't know. It's warm. I'm blaming the heat. Anyway. You said in one of your Hendrix videos, his sound on the first album sounded like he was using a Fender amp. Which tracks do you think are more likely to be Fender and which one's a Marshall? And also, which Fender amp would it be? Okay, so as far as I know, the entire first Hendrix album I've experienced it's just Fender. And I believe it's a Fender Twin. I could be totally wrong, because I've actually got a vinyl record where it has an interview in it with Jerry Stickles and Jerry... Oh, that's really bad. Jerry something. He's other guitar tech, basically, because Jerry Stickles was the road manager, but he was also in charge of Jimmy's gear when Jimmy first started. And there was another Jerry. I think, I'm sorry. Oh God, that's so bad. I've just had a brain blank. Okay, so I do apologise, but it's got an interview with them two in the album sleeve, and basically the guy who took over Jerry Stickles' job, the other Jerry, I think his name was Jerry. He could probably not even Jerry, but anyway, the other guy who took over his job said if you name it, Jimmy would have used it. Because Jimmy, although he loved his Marshalls and his Strats and his fuzz faces and his wah-wahs, used everything he could. Apparently he had a Telecaster, he loved the Les Pauls, he had his Flying V's, he had the Hagstrom weird guitars, he had an old Hofner, he had Gibson 330s, he had all sorts of guitars. Red House wasn't recorded on a Strat, it was recorded on a Hofner. And through a double stack that and Noel Redding's not playing bass on Red House. Noel Redding's playing a Gibson 335 with the tone rolled off, doing stuff like this. He's got the tone rolled off and you go like that, give it a bassier tone, but he's playing that through a Marshall Super Lead. So there's no bass on the original recording of Red House, and it's actually not a Strat, it's a Hofner, which is really, really cool. But yeah, all of I experienced is Fender, and you can hear it's a Fender because it's snappier, it's brighter, it's got more of this kind of it's got that Fendery trebly sound, and if you compare it to some tracks off I experienced, like for instance, like I don't know, it's hard to pin one down now, but some songs like not Voodoo Child, because Voodoo Child was a Fender amp. I'm not particularly sure All Along the Watchtower was a Marshall, neither. But yeah, I mean, if you compare the sounds, like, say, for instance, of, like, Jimmy's live sound to IO Experienced sound, it's totally different. You know, it sounds to me like most... And if you listen to, like, Wind Cries Mary and Hey Joe, the snappy, compressed sound that Jimmy's got there reeks of a Fender, an old amp, an old Fender. They just have that sound. Especially like the intro to Hey Joe, that doesn't sound anything like that, which is a Marshall. It doesn't have that mid-range. It's a lot brighter, treblier kind of sound. It's got a real clean snap to it, which is very, you know, characteristic of a Fender. But they did say that he liked Fender Twins. And he would have used Fender Twins a lot, along with Fender Bandmasters and Tremoluxes and all sorts of amps when he was on the Chitlin circuit and doing the touring around the US. He wouldn't have used Marshalls then, it'd just been Fenders, like Bandmasters and stuff. But yeah, the whole album, first album, I'm positive is just a Fender. Hey Joe is apparently recorded on a Telecaster, and so is Purple Haze, but again, we know he had a Telecaster in the studio because it was Noel Redding's Telecaster, but it's we can't say for sure whether he did use it. And sadly, all the people that would know aren't with us anymore. Noel Redding, Mitch Mitchell, Jimmy himself. You know, quite a lot of these people, like, it's only speculation. We can only speculate to what Jimmy used at what time. Unless that person was there at the time, like, say, for instance, like Jerry Stickles saying, like, Red House was on a Hofner and the bass wasn't a bass, it was Noel Redding playing a Gibson hollow body with the tone off. Yeah, whole album, first album is without a doubt a Fender amp. Second album, Electric Ladyland, no, Axis Borders Love, is also Fender. It sounds ridiculous, Little Wing in Out of Phase, that sounds like a Fender, and Castles Made of Sand sounds like a wound up Fender amp. They sound like Showmans. Castles Made of Sand sounds like an old Showman amp, wound up. It really does. It's got that kind of characteristic. It's very kind of broken up And same as Boulder's Love. Boulder's Love doesn't sound like a Marshall. It sounds like a Fender Showman. And so I would say the first two albums are just covered in Fender. But there is and Marshall, I think, came in more in Electric Ladyland, because there's certain sounds, like it's Third Stone from the Sun, and Crosstown Traffic. Voodoo Child was apparently a showman. Voodoo Child was Slight Return, sorry, was apparently a showman run through a 1x15 cab. According to Eddie Kramer, who recorded it, he said he didn't use a Marshall, he used a Fender, and it was a showman run through a single 15-inch speaker cab, which is the Dick Dale setup, pretty much. I wouldn't say Along the Watchtower's Marshall, really. It doesn't really sound Marshally. It sounds, again, it sounds like it's got this kind of real Fendery warmth. It sounds like a tweed Fender. But, and also Voodoo Child, not the blues version of Voodoo Child. Voodoo Child, two different songs, the same kind of meaning, in a way. Voodoo Child sounds definitely like one of those high-powered twins to me. It doesn't sound like a Marshall. But, again, could be totally wrong. We'll never 100% know. But I would say Axis Boulder's Love and I Experienced are littered with Fender amps. Guitar-wise, I can guarantee there's Strats, Telecasters, probably that Black Les Paul Custom he had with the P90s and the staple pickup. Probably his Flying V. There was a Hofner, a Hagstrom. What else was there used? Noel Redding had a P bass. He didn't have his jazz bass. He had a jazz bass as well, but he used a P bass on a lot of the first stuff. It's a white one. You can see it in some pictures. It's really hard to say, but I would say the first two albums are mostly, if not 100% Fender, and I would say Ire Experience is where you start getting a mix of both, and then after that, it's just, and it's just after Marshall, because Jimmy actually, when he first came over to England, wasn't using Marshall. He was using, what he could get his hands on, and then in '67, he's got his hands on a Marshall double stack. And then he went over to the Monterey Pop Festival with that double stack, and he played the Monterey Pop Festival with that double stack. And he also it was also daisy changed into a Fender Bandmaster. At the Monterey Pop Festival, he had the Marshall and the Bandmaster running. You can see the Bandmasters behind his double stack. But after that gig, when they were touring the States, Sun Amps, a guy from Sun Amps, the SUNN, they approached Jimmy and said, would he use their amps if on the condition that he helps them with their R&D and basically hone the Sun amps. And Jimmy was like, yeah, no problem. But in that case, the deal was that they get whatever they want. If they ask for it, they get it. But Jimmy didn't like Sun amps. He said they were too bright, and he didn't like the noise they had when they were wound up all the way. And they went as far as making an amp that only went to 8. For Jimmy, just so it looked like it was cranked up all the way, but it was only at 8, because Jimmy liked to run his Marshalls at 8. He didn't like not very often Jimmy ran them on full tilt. They were run very hot though, but not full tilt. But he used Sun amps for a while. It started off with 2 or 3 4x10 cabs. And Jimmy didn't like that because he was used to the 4x12s of a Marshall. And he didn't like that. So what he did, he combined the 4x10 double stack from Sun with his Marshall. But then they got rid of a Marshall for a while. He just went to Sun. And Sun supplied him with what was called a Coliseum stack, which was 3 120-watt heads with 6... I think they were 8x12 speaker cabs. And you can see them in some pictures. There's not many pictures of them, but there's a few. And he's got 3 heads, and there's 2 cabs on their sides like that, and then there's 4 cabs below vertically. But Jimmy didn't like the Sun amps. He said they were too bright, and it wasn't long after that he just went back to Marshalls and started using... If you see Jimmy with 2 double stacks, they're Marshall Majors. They're the 200 watt. If he's got 3 double stacks, like at Royal Albert Hall, they're just 100 watt heads. And also, Jimmy also had his Marshalls modded to be more reliable because he would burn them out so quick. Because obviously, Jimmy was gigging 2 times a day, 7 days a week. So you can imagine those Marshalls would burn out in about a week or 2 weeks. And this guy from New York modded the amplifier of the Marshalls to run a bit colder and a little less and more reliably. He tweaked them, and he tweaked the wattage of them to be 125 watts, so they're a little bit more powerful, much in the same way that Marshall modded Richie Blackmore's Marshall Majors to be 400 watts instead of 200. And he tweaked the heads a little bit, the 100 watt super leads a little bit to be 125 watts, and they're a little bit more reliable. They still died, but not as quick as usual. So yeah, and that point on. He also had Sound City as well, Jimmy did, but that didn't last very long. That was the kind of stack he pushed over. If you watch some early footage of Jimmy playing around like UK, like Blackpool, and some of the footage of that, he's got a Marshall double stack and a Sound City double stack, and it's always the Sound City double stack that he crams his guitar into and smashes into and pushes over, and he leaves the Marshall alone because I don't think he liked the Sound City at all. And he got the Sound City on the recommendation of Pete Townsend. Chas Chandler asked Pete Townsend, what's the 2 best amps around? And Pete Townsend said Sound City and Marshall, because obviously Pete Townsend had a hand in the Marshall double stack. So they got one of each, and Jimmy just preferred the Marshall. And then they got rid of the Sound City, stuck with a single double stack, and then they went to 2 double stacks, and then they went to 3. So yeah, anyway. But yeah, I've digressed massively here, haven't I? So I could talk for hours on Jimi Hendrix gear. Massive Jimi Hendrix nerd. So I've researched so much of this, so I could talk about it for hours. But maybe I should save that for another video another time. Sorry, everybody. But I've still got another question to go yet as well. Anyway, yeah, but it's like first 2 albums are predominantly Fender. I would say Electric Ladyland is where he starts experimenting using Marshalls and all sorts of stuff. But we'll never 100% know. There's still Fender on Electric Ladyland, sorry, but we'll never know for 100% what Jimmy used and what he didn't use, and this, that, and the other. And also, you say, well, yeah, what Fender amp would it be? It'd probably predominantly be a Fender Twin or a Fender Showman. Apparently, Jimmy loved the Showman because he was a big Dick Dale fan. So the Showman being named after Dick Dale. So yeah, it most probably be a Fender Twin, but he did have a Showman as well. So yeah. So I hope that's answered your question. Long-winded. I do apologise, but I hope, yeah. I don't know. Okay, so moving on to question 7, everybody. Final question of the day before I bore you all to tears. I play various venues with their own backline of amps. Sorry, let me start this again. I play various venues and they have their own backline of amps most of the time. This means I have only a few minutes to dial in my sound. Do you have any suggestions for quickly finding your sound on an amp? Yeah. Number 1, ultimate main point when using somebody else's amp or going to try a new amp or whatever, or even approaching your amp, know what sound you want. That's the ultimate thing. Know what, if you go into it going, I don't really know what I want out of this, then you're never going to find it because you don't know. You need to be 100% tunnel visioned on that sound. I want X, Y, Z sound. And you need to kind of like approach the amp in a way that it makes sense. So for instance, for me, cause I don't like to use myself as an example. I feel like I'm being an egotistical idiot, but I can only speak from my perspective, sadly. For me, what I do is if I'm going onto a stage where there's an amp that it's not mine, and I've just got to plug into it, and I've got literally, like you say, you got 5-10 minutes to get your sound, be happy, be comfortable, and go. What I normally tend to do is I try the clean channel first, but most of the time I'll get an idea of what amp it is, and I'll go, right, clean channel won't work for me. And if it's got a dirty channel, I'll normally go for the dirty channel, and just run the gain really low. Well, most of the time I have the gain about 1, and I turn all the EQ off, the usual Dave thing. And depending on what kind of amp it is, like for instance, there was a JCM 2000 1x12 combo at a gig I did last year. Summer last year we did a gig and there was a JCM 2000 combo that I had to plug into, and that was it. So I immediately thought, right, it's a Marshall. I know I'm not going to get, I don't use the clean channel on my MGs, so I'm not going to use a clean channel. I'm not going to try and faff around with that because I'll get too much low end out of my pedals and it won't work. And again, knowing your setup, knowing your pedals, knowing what they do, like, you know, knowing your sound inside and out is key to this. So for instance, I know for sometimes if I plug my pedal board into, because it's set up for an overdrive channel, my pedal board and my ears are set up for that kind of broken up thing. If I plug into an amp that's just clean and it's got a load of clean headroom and no breakup at all, I know for a fact that I'll have to turn the bass all the way off on the amp and also maybe go inside the zoom and EQ the amp with the zoom pedal and lower the bass into the minuses, just because there'll be so much low end there. So back to, sorry, I digress. But that is really important, knowing your gear, knowing what your gear sounds like into different amps as well. So yeah, there was JSM 2000, so I was like, looked at the clean channel, I was like, the clean channel ain't going to work for me, I know it's not, so I'll go to the distortion channel, the classic channel, I think it was called, but it's just a distortion channel. And I thought, right, knock everything down, so I turned bass, middle and treble all the way down, turn the channel volume all the way up, crank the channel volume all the way up, turn the reverb off, because I've got reverb in my pedal, and I put the gain on 1, and I played, and I was like, it's too dark, so I brought up the mid to 2. I didn't go drastic. I don't go... like, a lot of people say you need to set everything at 12 o'clock and go from there, and it's like, I personally, that doesn't work for me at all. If I did that, it'd just be like, I'd end up turning everything back down to where I started, so... so I put the mids up to 2, and I was like, nah, not bad. Put the mids to 3, I was like, that's not too bad. And I said, it's just... But this happening in the space of a couple of seconds. I was like, it wasn't big enough. Being a little 1x12 combo wasn't big enough, so I put the bass on 2, that was perfect. So I had the mid at 3 and I had the bass at 2, and I was like, that's really cool. But it didn't have any high-end sparkle. For some reason, it was just really dull. I don't know if it's because no one was using the standby. On being a valve amplifier, the standby is really important. And everyone was just turning it off after they used it and weren't using the standby. So I think the poor amp was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was just having a bit of a hard day of it. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to add the treble, which I normally do that as a last resort if the amp's too dark. I don't like the treble, as you all know. I don't like to touch it at all unless I had to. So I put the treble at 2, and there it was. It was just like, yeah, that works. And it wasn't exact to what I wanted. It wasn't exactly the same sound as my CR120 or my MGs, but it was good enough for me. I was happy with it. And it's always going to be, know what you want, but know that you're not going to get it 100%. It's always going to have to be an approximation and a guesstimate, because if it's not your gear, it's never going to sound like your gear, if that makes any sense. There's always going to be a compromise there. But knowing what you want sound-wise is important. I also did another gig a while back. It's actually on YouTube, where I was running for a Victory amp, and I plugged into this Victory amp, and it was going through a 212 vertical cab, and it was just immediately overly bassy because it was just a single channel amp, and the gain dial, once you got the gain dial to about 3, started to distort, not break up, distort, and I was like, I can't do that. So I had to put the gain really low, crank up the master, but then it was just like it was literally like I was playing through a bass amp. It was so much low end. So what I had to do is I had to go into my zoom pedal. I went to the EQ section, which is why the zoom pedal is so cool. And I lowered all the bass, just turned the bass off, just knocked it down into it was like -8. I had the bass on, and it just cleaned it up, and there it was. So having a multi-effects unit like the G2 and having the ability to have that EQ inside the G2, because the G2's got an incredible EQ section. It's got bass, middle, treble, low, mid, presence, and what's the other one? Harmonics. It's got so much EQ control over whatever you plug into. You never really fail to know what you're doing. But knowing what you're doing and knowing it's never going to be 100%, you're just going to have to compromise, is key to that. But you need to know what you want in the first place. If you go up to an amp and go, well, I don't really know what I want out of this sound tonight, I don't really know where I'm going with it, you're going to struggle. I remember Phil X talking about this and him saying, like, he likes his basic sound to be AC/DC, then he likes to have his Bad Monkey pedal to kick on, which he doesn't use anymore, to kick on to go into Van Halen territory. So he already has that in mind. So he already knows that what amp he plugs into, he's going to go, like, you know, he's going to immediately kind of go, you know, that kind of thing. And if that sounds right, he's got his rhythm tone. And then when he kicks on his overdrive, it does the Van Halen thing. He knows he's got his sound. So have a reference. Say, like, oh, I want a Jimi Hendrix-esque sound. I want a Malcolm Young kind of sound. I want a Richie Blackmore kind of sound. I want a Metallica kind of sound. Whatever it is, use that as a reference and go for that. And then know what your gear is and how it behaves, and just adjust the amp accordingly. I mean, I would really start with everything. If I had to say, I would start with everything on 2, not 5. I think 5 can be a bit much, but again, this is only that's what works for me. I start with everything on 0, so what do I know? But again, that's what works for me. It's what works for you might not be the same kind of thing. So, but yeah, you really need to know what you're after in the first place. If you don't know what you're after, you're going to be a bit of a you're going to be lost in a sea of tone, so to say, to be poetic about it, because it's just going to be like, well, what do I do, kind of thing. So yeah. Know what you want. Have a reference point in your head of what sound you want, be it AC/DC, Deep Purple, whatever. You know, and go for that. Like I say, Phil X, how he EQs his amps is a very, very cool way of doing it. It really is, to have that reference point of your heroes, and it works really well. Because I'm always after that John Frusciante thing for my clean. That, yeah. You know, my tester riff is always scar tissue. You know, if that sounds right to me, I've got my clean tone. And then my distortion sound is just, my reference tone is, as long as it's fat and warm, like, and I can palm mute and get a really nice palm mute sound, I'm happy. So if it's like, you know, big and fat, and then when you go to a net pickup, it's really smooth. I'm happy with that. And then same with the DS2. For DS2, well, the DS2 kind of goes hand in hand with the jackhammer anyway. But the DS2 has to be really fat, warm, and like ridiculously smooth. And really singy. The DS2 is like my singing pedal. It really sings. The jackhammer is just a big brute of a pedal, especially when you're... Whereas the DS2 sings more. It's got a bit more of a... You know, and it's just one of those kind of things. And you got to turn it off and on when you need the DS2, because otherwise you get that. Especially if you've got the jackhammer on, the governor on as well. It's like... You get the rain dance. Okay, so yeah, that's what I would say do. I mean, hopefully there's something in there you can take away. Hopefully I haven't... Hope I've answered that question okay. But yeah, it really is important to know what you want out of the amp, regardless of what the amp is, make, model, whatever. You need to know what you want out of it in the first place. Do you want it to sound like a Marshall? If so, what does a Marshall sound like? You know, what kind of Marshall do you want it to sound like? You know, who do you want it to sound like? And to say, using people like AC/DC or Jimi Hendrix or John Frusciante as a reference point really helps you, because then you kind of learn what you want, so to say, if that makes any sense. Because then kind of like, you know, you can play one of their riffs. It's like, you know, does it sound like John Frusciante? Sounds pretty close. You know, does it sound like AC/DC? Pretty close. So then you can just kind of go, yep, I'm ready. And that will literally take most 5 minutes. So, you know, then you're away. But you want to get really just comfortable with anything you play through. You know, you don't want to be that person who turns up to a gig and says, I'm not playing on that because I'm just not doing it. No. I've had that with gig. I did a gig last year where people refused. I had this amp and my CR120, and there was people who eventually did play through them, but they refused downright to play through them, and as a result, I got verbally abused because, well, I'm not using that. Not using that, you know, horrendous, pointing at me. My fault, apparently. You know, me supplying my gear for them to use so it's easier on them and I get abused. Don't be that person. Never be that person. Use what's there without a fuss. Make it work for you. You can make it work for you. Anything like that is possible. No, in the back of your mind, it's never going to be 100% to what you want. But no, you can get close. And know that, you know, it doesn't matter. As long as it sounds close enough to what you want, that's all that matters. Because then you can get on with doing your job, which is entertaining and performing. You know, people aren't there to see you tweak your amplifier and mess with your tone. They're there to see you play your music and there to see you put on a show. They're not there to go, oh, he just tweaked his mid dial. That sounds better. They're not thinking about that. They're just thinking about the music. They're not thinking about what you're doing with your amplifier. So just get it set it and forget it. That's my advice. But again, know what you want and go from there. And no, it's never going to be 100%, but it will be close. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. I do feel that I wasn't a very good answer, but I feel that about every question I say, don't I, everybody? But I hope I've answered your questions okay today, everybody. And yes, I know I went off on tangents, but I can't help myself sometimes. I have tendencies to just ramble on and ramble. So I do apologise about it, especially when I get into like subjects of Jimi Hendrix and all sorts of stuff like that. I just, you know, got to stop me. You got to hold me back. Hold me back. Come on, pull. It's that kind of thing. Anyway, yes, I hope you enjoyed this Q&A, everybody. And I will see you on Friday for another video. Not going to tell you what it is. Ha ha ha. I'm evil. Anyway. Yes, but yeah, I'll see you on Friday. For some reason I went into like a Mr. Burns stance there. Yeah, excellent. Anyway, maybe that's what I was trying to do. I don't know. Anyway, I'm where I am. Anyway. Okay, thank you very much for watching, everybody. I will see you again on Friday. Have a great morning, afternoon, and evening. I hope I answered your questions okay. I really do. I apologise if I haven't. I'm really sorry. I will try better next time. And yeah, I will see you again very soon. Have a great... Goodbye now.